Hey guys, Steve Gutowski back here at SHOT Show 2019. We're in the media room, the press room. There's actually quite a shocking amount of press people that come to SHOT Show. You'd be surprised at how many people in the trade magazine industry there are. But we're here with John Correia, who runs Active Self-Protection, which is a very popular YouTube channel. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do on YouTube?
Well, you know, I jokingly tell people that I talk while people get mugged. So what I really do, people send me real-life surveillance videos of armed robberies, carjackings, muggings, stabbings, home invasions, and I do after-action reports on them. And out of those, we learn lessons to help people that are good folks stay safe from criminal violence. It's one of the most viewed channels in the self-defense and firearms space every month on YouTube. And
how many subscribers do we have?
We have 1.3 million subscribers right now, a few more than that. We get anywhere from 15 to 30-ish million views a month, depending on the month.
So very popular channel for sure.
Yeah, and growing like a weed. And I teach live classes. I teach both empty-handed skills and firearms classes. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm a subscriber. I'm somebody who watches the videos every day. As myself being a firearms instructor, I think it's very very useful information that you're putting out there. But what I really wanted to talk to you about today is sort of how social media is interacting with people who produce gun content, because that's something that's been very controversial over the last several years. YouTube itself, where you have a very large presence, has made policy changes over the last couple of years that sort of restrict what kind of content is able to be monetized and posted on YouTube. Right. And so what I'm wondering, I think a lot of people at home are wondering, like, how has that actually affected you as somebody who does that for a living, really? You know,
I could see a couple of channels that it really could have a hard time with, because they're very careful with manufacturing and stuff like that, which is different than assembly. But you know, they just made a fiat thing and said no bump stocks whatsoever, none of that stuff, which I can tell you I think is a wrong policy. I mean, I just don't think, I think they're running the risk of being declared a public carrier, and that would be hugely problematic for them in every way. And I don't think they want to do that. Because then that would open up the doors that, you know, you have to carry any kind of content with absolutely no ability to moderate. But for most of us, for instance, I run two channels. I have the main Active Self-Protection channel, which does have some monetization challenges. And the reason for that is not because of guns, but because of violence. Now, I'm within their terms of service because they allow violent content with an educational purpose. And that's all I do is an educational purpose. But of course, all this is being handled by bots and then reviewed by who knows who, because you don't get any kind of communication. I actually have a contact at Google at YouTube, but even he's like, I don't have that kind of information. And they're, I'm sure, not looking at it for long, and I'm sure that discussion is pretty arbitrary, you know. So I win right now on my main channel. I'm about 65-35 monetized versus non-monetized, maybe 60-40. And I get it, you know, somebody loses their life on camera and they go, wait a minute, that's not advertiser friendly. Well, I disagree, because look, people take out ads on The Walking Dead, for gracious sakes. That kind of content can be ad generating.
You're not glorifying the violence, obviously, you're trying to teach people how to survive it, essentially.
On the other hand, my second channel, Active Self-Protection Extra, is, I mean, really much more of a standard gun channel. You know, I show me shooting, I teach firearm skills, I talk about holsters and gear and do gun reviews and those kind of things. And that channel is literally 100% monetized. I have zero problems with monetization there. The only time I have any problems there at all is if I do stuff like, I will always, after a mass murder, talk about, I always wait 72 hours. I have a 72-hour rule. And then, okay, what are some of the lessons we can learn here? And that sensitive topic will sometimes get flagged. But other than that,
but mostly you have a decent relationship with YouTube, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously. So I tell folks within the firearms industry that the firearms industry as a whole is maybe 70 to 80 million views a month. I track the largest channels on YouTube by a long shot. I track them all every month, and we're 70 to 80 million views a month. Well, YouTube as an entity is 70 billion views a month. And so, I mean, we're this tiny little fraction. We're 1/10 of 1%. They could just squash anything related to guns, and it wouldn't even blip their radar. So the fact that there's even anybody there says they're not as anti as they could be. Also, I think you realize they had somebody show up to YouTube corporate headquarters and kill people and with a firearm, and nothing changed in their policies. I don't like some of the direction that they're heading, and I would go in a different direction. Not that they care, but that doesn't mean. Listen, as somebody who is at his core libertarian, I believe in private enterprise, and it's their platform. They can do whatever they want. I've used that platform to feed my family and to help people, and so I'm really grateful for that. And I think sometimes, to be quite honest, my friends who are more right-leaning tend to look at left-leaning folks and go, oh, you people need your safe space. Well, guess what? Right-leaning folks need their safe spaces too. And everybody's got to have a reason to feel like life ain't fair. But I think...
So you think some of this criticism of YouTube and how they've handled guns and maybe social media at large, because you also have a large Facebook presence as well. Do you think that's overblown to a certain extent, or like
some yes, some no? Some yes, some no.
Because you're somebody who's out there making a living doing gun content on social media. So what is it you're seeing?
I would actually say that YouTube's actually doing a better job than Facebook. Facebook, who owns Instagram as well, they have taken a pretty hard line that, for instance, as a firearms trainer, I can't take out advertisements for classes in areas where there is anything firearms related in it. Any federal firearms licensee, if they sell guns, even as an FFL, that they have to go through all background checks and all that stuff. Nope, Facebook says absolutely not. They put it in the same category as illegal drugs. I think that's asinine, but that's a social position they've chose to take. They're a company that can do that. They're not a government entity. Right. I recognize that. They are the 800-pound gorilla, and so they can make any policy they want. I don't like it. I think that to me is a detriment to real cultural dialogue. They had for the longest time, one of their executive vice presidents was a real gun guy, and as Chuck Grossi is his name, and Chuck was a very big help to us. Well, he just retired in November, and God bless him for doing that. You know what I mean? He's got to live his life, but that I think has led to less of a voice there, and of course they're in an enclave where it's just their social policy to say no, we want to affect change here. Well, while I understand that, I think that when you get into that kind of engagement, it's not a great way to do things, because especially legal activities like that. Now, of course, I say that, and then a lot of folks are going to come back and say, well, listen, in the nation, pornography is legal, so why can't they take out ads and those things? So, you're going to have to make decisions, but I think that in my world, my understanding of things, firearms use is, at its core, moral and legal. I mean, it's a moral activity, and so there's some difference there. Just because something's moral doesn't mean it's legal, and something's immoral is not necessarily illegal. But
sure. So
in the social world in general, it's a polarizing topic, just like it is in the political discourse. You start talking about the Second Amendment, and you want to talk about concealed carry or mass killings or violence. I don't even like talking about gun violence. I think that's a misleading idea. Violence is the problem. As a whole, and some violence is using firearms, and we need to be cognizant of that. But so I think that as a social media as a whole, it's a tough topic for anyone to have an overarching policy on, especially somebody as big as one of the giants, Facebook, YouTube, those kind of folks.
But as somebody, so I think what you're saying here, what I'm taking away from it, is that as somebody who makes a living off of gun content on social media, things aren't where you'd want them to be, but they're not necessarily as bad as maybe some people fear it to be.
Yeah, I don't think the sky is falling. Before the adpocalypse, I think sometimes the gun folks go, oh, the adpocalypse hit us worse than anyone else on YouTube. It didn't. I got plenty of friends in the non-gun world, and it crushed their dreams and hopes and souls too. That wasn't we hate guns. That was our advertisers and our revenue streams all dried up, and so what are we going to do? And that affected me like anybody else in big ways, and we went, oh no. But you persist and overcome in any industry. When things change, you got to adapt or you die. It's that simple. So you can either be Blockbuster or you can be Netflix, So I don't think that it's the end of the world. I don't think it's great. I think that I would love to see more libertarian policies in these areas, but it's not the end of the universe. We've been able to. Not to put too fine a point on it, 2017 to 2018, we doubled revenue. Can't argue with that.
So you're growing.
Still. Yeah, and things are growing.
Even with everything, you're still growing.
Mm-hmm. And you got to find creative ways, I think it used to be that you'd be like, look, I just put up a social media presence and then the money rolls in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was like oil speculating, you know, in the beginning of the 20th century. Well, look, I showed up in Texas and the money started pouring in. Well, eventually, that's not how business works anymore. So there'd be some competition. You got to figure out how to do things well. Well, guess what? That's the area and the time that we're in the firearms world. But for those who I think who are innovating and those who are willing to do the nitty-gritty work, some folks look at me and they're like, oh, look, you just kind of jumped up out of nowhere. I was like, well, if nowhere is 5 years of hard work, then okay. But I've been with my staff and with some support and friends and the grace of God, you know, we worked for 5 years without really making any kind of significant money. I'm not making crazy money now. It's not like we're, you know, stacking bills or whatever, but we pay the bills and pay my staff and are able to live. So I can't argue.
Great. Well, I appreciate you taking a little bit of time to talk with us about your experience as somebody who's got a significant presence on social media. And hopefully we can come out and try one of your classes and I can review that. And
Love it.
We'll see how that goes.
Love to have you, man.
You know, like I said, I'm a big fan. I like your philosophy and what you do. And I really appreciate you talking with us. And we're going to have more from the floor here coming up. Make sure you're following on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. YouTube too. We'll be posting
on the
some
face.
So just everything. Just if you see Free Beacon, just follow. All right. So thank you guys. We'll have more coming up shortly.